I will call the August 15, 2024 meeting of the Brandon Planning and Zoning Commission to order. Can we have a roll call, please?
Megan. Here. Brian. Present. Brooks.
Here.
Rob. Here. Alyssa.
Here.
And Mike. And no
Not
Barb.
here.
Barb as well.
No.
No Barb. We have a quorum.
Okay, making note that our regular chairman, Barb Fish, is not here, so I'm leading the meeting, Alyssa Teely. We have an entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
This is Heidbrink, so moved.
Shoneman, second.
I have a motion second to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. We have a consent calendar with 3 plats. I entertain a motion to approve or deny.
Brooks Snow making a motion to approve.
Bassett, I'll second.
We have a motion and second to approve the consent calendar. All in favor say aye. All opposed, motion carries. All right, I'd entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the August 1, 2024 meeting. Am I allowed to make a motion?
Yep, you're still
Yep.
a member of the board.
All right, well, I move to approve the minutes of the August 1, 2024 meeting.
Heidbrink second.
I have a motion second to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye. All opposed, motion carried. Now is the time in our meeting where we take public comments from the public. If you are on the agenda, then you can talk about that when we get to your part of the meeting, but anybody else can come up, talk about anything? Okay, I'm not seeing anyone jump up, so we'll move on to our next. Oh, we have to reconvene the planning and zoning meeting right now to the Board of Adjustment. I can't remember how we do that. Do we move to adjourn and then have another second vote to reconvene, or do we do that all in one?
So you would not adjourn, you would just reconvene because
Okay.
you would be the planning commission afterwards. So you just do, we can skip probably the roll call since no one got up and left or no one showed up, so.
So I entertain a motion to reconvene as the Board of Adjustment.
Bassett, I will motion.
No, second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to reconvene as Board of Adjustment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carried. Since nobody has arrived or left since our previous roll call, we'll skip that part. And so calling toward the Board of Adjustment, I entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Heidbrink, so moved.
Shoneman, second.
A motion to approve the agenda of the Board of Adjustment. All in favor say aye. All opposed, motion carried. New business, number 10, we have a variance application for 208 West Elm Circle. Page 14 on your packets if you're following along. Is there anyone here to speak to that? If so, come on up to the podium. There's a button you push when you see the little red light come on. There you go. And then please say your name and address and let us know what you got in mind.
I'm Josh Buman, 208 West Elm Circle.
Kristen Buman, same address.
We're trying to get a variance for our deck, to build a new deck that's a little closer to our property line. I have some images or some pictures here.
Oh,
if
we'd
anyone-
love to see them.
This is all our existing deck, kind of why we're having to build a new deck.
Sure.
So we need to replace the deck regardless. It's just not really quality or really overly useful to us. And initially we were planning on having a larger deck that went further out, towards our property line, not understanding, where the variance line was. And our builder did not help us out there either. So we're hoping we can take this opportunity while putting in a higher quality deck to also make it bigger and more useful for our family.
Would you like me to explain some of these pictures for you?
Yes, please.
So the first picture just shows the steps coming down and there's just a gap where it should be sitting on the deck.
Is that this one?
Yep. So right in the middle of the picture where the steps are, the edge of the steps, I can come point it out for you.
This way.
Ren.
And then right at the bottom here, sorry.
Oh,
right
here.
there's a
Yeah.
gap.
Ah,
That should be on the deck.
oh,
Right
I see.
behind that gap, there's just a chunk of 2x4, so the railing will run where it's supposed to be. And I didn't get a photo, but all the railings, they don't match up. There's like an inch riser, so if you're running your hand, you hit that edge of the railing. And how the steps are installed with just that 1x1, we're going to put in like proper steps like you have in your house with that middle, I don't know, runner if you want to call it that or not, but it's just, they're not supporting well when you're going up and down the stairs. The second page kind of shows how that railing goes into the base. It's just, it doesn't match up nice. It's really ugly. It's missing some of the bolts that would hold it into the deck. Next page kind of shows where he made these custom cuts. They just don't line up at all. And it's actually getting water in the house at times when it rains really hard. And there's no gap at all on that, the decking, so the water, when it's blowing hard out of the west, it blows right against the house. The next page just kind of shows how there's no hangers, hanger joists, or there's no brackets on the bottom. That metal part on the left, there's not one on the right. And it's just not done correctly, so it's not safe, so we have to replace our deck. And then the last page is just another, that's our upper level deck, which when we replace that, will be the same size. That'll be what it is, but just showing up top also didn't have it done correctly.
Okay, I see. I drove past your house yesterday, and, of course, I couldn't see the deck from the front of the house, and I wasn't gonna trespass, but I drove around like to the river and tried to look
Okay.
up, and I couldn't see it really well, you
Yep.
know? So, I see the diagrams we have here.
We've been meeting with the builder, but he's
Uh-huh.
out of town currently, so he couldn't be here tonight.
Uh-huh.
They've done work in town at 605 excavator remodeling. I've known they worked in the town before. They did our neighbor's deck, and they did a really nice job, so we were pretty impressed with them. And that's who we've been dealing with, getting quotes for different options depending on how
We
this goes.
submitted their plans, right?
That's what,
That's what okay.
yeah, he doesn't have a exact plan yet, just deciding on how far we can go.
Yeah, understand this
Yeah.
first.
Patrick, can you let us know a little bit more specifically, what we're dealing with here as far as, variance request?
Yep, so the actual variance request itself is seeking to add a deck that would be 14.75 feet from the setback, from the property line. The rear property line requires a setback of 25 feet. They want to be 14.75 feet.
So that's a difference of 10.25 feet.
Our current deck it's 4 feet wide from our sliding glass window. So you can have two chairs. Yeah, 4 feet deep, I'm sorry.
4 feet, yeah.
Towards-
4
to the
feet.
west.
Towards the
4
property line.
feet,
Yep, towards the
can
property line, the rear property
take
line.
4 steps.
Yep.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
can't put a table or anything on it.
I
It's
see.
Pretty
Mhm.
shallow.
And so is this backyard, this white line I'm seeing here, is that a fence?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
So the
one of
fence is
metal-
inside the
It's
property line?
the retaining wall that you could see.
Oh, that's what. Yeah,
Oh,
that's
it's a
what you're saying.
retaining wall?
The
Yeah.
white,
Okay,
way over on the edge or the,
Yeah, that line there, that's with the arrow going up and down, that's a retaining wall.
The bolder white line there is the retaining wall.
the bigger one?
Yeah,
Yes, that line, yep.
and this is the property line.
correct.
All right. So, from the paperwork we have in our packet here, I understand there is a little bit of history with this property. Maybe can you explain that a little bit, Patrick?
Yep, not that the history of the property weighs in any way on the current owner of the property. The property does have a bit of a history. At least it might be the person before them. I don't know how long they've lived there, but this is a different name on the past application. But an owner, 2017-ish, applied for a permit for a deck. It was too big, so it was denied. They ended up not seeking permission and did it anyway. It was noticed by the city. Then they applied for permits. Something must have changed in the meantime with our code, because at that point it complied, but it didn't when it was built. The retaining wall, according to the city administrator, was originally built without a permit. There was some kind of history there with drainage and flooding the property next to it. The city noticed that's been fixed. The driveway is apparently a little bit off the front yard setback, so it's out of compliance there. And so this is the current variance application for the deck in the back.
We did get a variance for that driveway. I understand you're saying it's not related, but I just
Yep.
we did this for that process. That's our builder who he's talking about, who,
Okay.
those would have been under his name.
The dimensions of the deck as it is right now, are they in compliance or no?
I believe so.
As far as we know.
As far as we know.
We didn't have maybe to clarify a little bit of what he said, we didn't have a deck and then, maybe he had an intention to put on the size of deck we had asked for. And maybe the city found out when the city signed off, I think we just had barely planks at all. We got home one day and it was just kind of plank.
we got
We
home
never
one
had
day
a
and it
bigger
was on.
deck back there. It was kind of, he just threw something on a little bit to, I think,
But the
satisfy and was hoping to then get a variance to
Yeah,
make it bigger and eventually
yeah,
finished it so that
but the
we could
4
pass
foot,
inspection.
you said it's 4 foot
Deep,
from
like
your
out from
door?
the house.
Is that,
I don't know for sure, but my guess is yes, because last I heard the deck did comply.
I think it's right at 25 feet right now, I believe.
so if they were to rebuild exactly the way it is right now, that wouldn't be a problem? Is that correct? Just get a building permit,
Generally speaking, correct.
correct?
Yeah. We'd have to look at plans and materials.
Yeah.
And Paul would have to go through the building code to make sure it was structurally sound and all that fun stuff. But yes, generally
Okay.
yes.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak to this? None? No? Okay. Then I guess I'll open it up to discussion of the planning and zoning people or the Board of Adjustment people.
So the 16 by 16 deck is at what level of the house? You mentioned an upper deck too, but this 16 by 16
That would be
request is,
the main level coming in, it would be the second level, but it's the level that the
To
garage
walk
is
out.
it's
at.
the, kind of the main floor
The main
level, so
floor,
to speak, but,
Yeah.
okay.
We have a small deck, off of our master. We'd be replacing at the same time, but it wouldn't be looking to make it any bigger, so it'd still be in compliance. That was that last photo that Josh showed.
That was the bottom of the upper deck.
Yeah.
So this house, the backyard's kind of on a hill, right?
Yeah, quite a steep hill.
So, yeah.
Yep.
So if you walked in the front door of your house and kept going, like this deck would come off the kitchen,
Correct, yep.
and then like you have a walk-out basement, or
Yes.
walk-out,
Yes,
yeah,
yep.
okay. I get it.
seeing a hardship.
One of the things we have to do is when we approve or deny any variance request, or when we approve any variance request, we have to put on the form is, why did we approve this? Because the property had some kind of hardship. Not the owner, but the property. So, what Brian here is saying, that he's not seeing a hardship. Is there one we're missing that you might be able to identify, or?
I'm not necessarily up to speed on all of the exact definitions of hardship, but in my mind, the deck isn't really usable. You can't put furniture on it. And understanding that it's our responsibility to understand rules and laws, so, us not understanding that as the builder was going about, deciding where the house would sit and the size and such, maybe on us, but we would have honestly made the house smaller to have the bigger deck because we were gonna have such a small yard. So that was it was a big piece of, that view and being up there was, that's why we chose that location. And, we wanted to have some outdoor space off of the house, and that's what, he was promised to us and was our intent. And I get that's not on the city, that's on us, but, our builder did not inform us that we would need to get a variance. I think kind of assumed that we would get it, and had we understood that, we would have made the house smaller. I mean, it's having that outdoor space on, on a spot like that is important, and we'd like to be able to, have a table out there and chairs and eat with our family. Does that qualify as a hardship? I don't know that, but I think it's an important piece of property value and value to our family. I don't know what my understanding is those variances relate to ability to get, through for utilities and things like that. Does it make a difference at all that we're sitting on a state park like that and there's really nothing behind us?
One thing I'm wondering, and again, this question may be for Patrick, or probably for Paul, would be, can they expand the deck? Can they make the deck bigger than it is? Maybe not all the 16 by 16 they want, but is there a possibility of making the deck bigger than it is and still remain within the required setbacks? Have to do some measuring.
You'd have to do some measuring, but my guess is, looking at the picture, that the expansion is necessary to make it room. You could add the strip, but if you can't put something in the strip now, then expanding the strip wouldn't really help them.
Well, yeah, I kind of meant like distance from the house, not.
Yeah, it wouldn't make it
it's-
wider, it would just make the strip longer. It would still be the same width. So, just for, zoning definitions sometimes differ than if you looked in the dictionary, or you just thought of what the definition should be. So for zoning purposes in Brandon, an unnecessary hardship is something generally about the property that makes it unusable. It's not, we really want a third stall garage because it would be nice for the house. It's something about the property. There's a big lake in the middle, or you have a giant hill in the front that makes, you can only build on the back part of the property. So if you had to be 25 feet off the back part of the property and the front is unusable for 50 feet, that gives you a weird shape. Or there's a lake in the middle, something about the property, or like a ridge line in the middle, that makes you unable to use it reasonably. So it's a bit different than what you or I outside of this room would think a hardship is.
So when it comes to a deck and the distance from a property line, can you give me an example of a hardship with it? Because to me, I feel like it'd be hard for me to think of like what would qualify for a hardship for this situation, and you can apply for this variance, right? So I'm kind of curious.
Usually it has to do with the shape of a lot. Say you had a lot that was an S or some weird shape. That cul-de-sacs are a complicated situation just because it's not a rectangle. It's a, hopefully at best a cone shape, but sometimes they look even more different than that. A hardship is kind of hard to come up with off the top of your head. This board kind of has to see it to know, but Brian might have an
So,
example.
some examples of hardships that we've dealt with in the past are utilities going through the property, easements going through the property, changes in codes, or sorry, changes in ordinances since when the time a structure was built until the time it is now. Those are kinds of hardships that we've dealt with in the past and we've taken into consideration. So. So looking at this, you know, we don't have a floor plan available, but, you know, it does appear that there is room on the northwest corner, for about what appears to be about 11.75 foot, deep deck.
We don't have a door there. I mean, that'd be a whole remodel.
Yeah, so deep. Going to sheet 28. Yeah, if the current deck is 5.75 feet deep on a 4 foot deep jog in the house, the opposite side of the jog is 10 foot. So you could gain 6 feet on that side, in addition to the 5.75 feet from where the deck currently is at. That is in compliance.
Come out your kitchen, have a little boardwalk. Deck here.
There again, I don't know what's inside the building,
Yeah.
what rooms are there, but
We'd have to completely remodel the kitchen to be able to have a door, so. It's a very different kind of project.
Or a skinny deck that is really long. Along here, 5 foot deck that's, goes all the way down the south side. Skinny deck here. But that way is where we run into problems.
Of course, I can completely understand the desire to have a deck like this, and I can see what you're saying, that the one that exists is, you know, a little more than a step out or whatever. Unfortunately, it looks like it was built that way out of necessity, and I have it's hard for me personally to consider reducing rear yard setbacks because we have those set for a reason, and in a vacuum, of course, your request and your desire to build a deck like this, of course, reasonable. Many people have something like this. I too struggle with because we're in a variance application situation, I do too have trouble with the hardship in this case, and that's where I have difficulty as well.
I guess our biggest thing is we were misled by our builder. Like she said, everything would have been different had we known the setbacks, and we wouldn't have never had the issue with the driveway and a few other things if we just would have been informed, and the builder assured us all this would be fine, and he had worked in the city before and stuff. And I guess we just put too much trust in him to relay the information to us.
appreciate that. Unfortunately, it may not change the situation as far as I'm concerned with the hardship. I wish, I hope there are other options you can find to consider, but, and this is just my opinion, I'm only talking for myself, not the board, but because I don't find a basis for a hardship, I guess I would make a motion to deny the request.
This is Heidbrink, I'll second that.
Any more discussion? I have a motion and a second to deny the request. All in favor, signify by
It
saying.
costs us like $400-500 to do this, and there's not a more to it than just there's a hardship or not, and that's that?
The problem is if we allow it.
That's a law.
Yeah. But why do we have that,
We
why
would
is
have
it?
to have everyone that comes in for it have it.
I'm not sure that I understand why the process exists for decks, but, okay.
We have to follow the law.
This, I assume you guys are the original owners, so you're aware that this application was presented previously back when the
No,
house
we
was
did
built.
not know the application was presented.
In
That was the builder
2017,
who did
it's a
that.
different
We
owner.
didn't, we knew nothing about it.
I'm sure
He
that
never,
the city probably informed you of such.
no, it was his property.
Well, unfortunately, we're bound by state and local laws, and if we grant a variance without a hardship, then basically our ordinance has no meaning, and we have no grounds for enforcing it. Because anybody can walk in and say, they have a 12-foot setback, we want a 12-foot setback. And by law, we would have to allow everybody in town to have a 12-foot setback.
Isn't there any
Whether it's a deck, whether it's a house, whether it's anything.
Is there any consideration for the, why does that law exist, and does that apply to this property? Like, there's no.
Doesn't matter who the neighbor is,
Just
whether
makes
it's a
me wonder
business,
why there's
another
a
house, whether it's a state-owned property.
I just don't understand why there's a process like this where we give you hundreds of dollars and there's not even, like, there'd be no one who would ever, I mean, like, for a deck, like, a person doesn't have to have a deck, so I think it'd be very easy to say there's not a hardship in every case, so maybe maybe there shouldn't be a process for decks then, if that's the case.
Well, we have a motion on the
It's to
table.
protect
Yeah.
the neighbors is what it's for. Because when your builder came in with his permit, he should have shown everything on that permit. The deck where it was gonna be located, the driveway where it was gonna be located. And the city is supposed to approve that.
We don't have
If
any
there's-
backyard
If there's two
neighbors,
people that
though.
look at it, I understand that, but you got side neighbors. And if there's a deck up in the air, you can technically take their view from it by interfering with their rear yard setback.
So, but if they were here and said they were fine with it, you're still saying that
They
you
would
wouldn't.
be fine with it, but if they
You're
go,
still-
if
but
they
it doesn't
go
make
to sell,
difference to
if
you
they go
anyway.
to sell, that person might not be fine with it, they look into our
Yeah.
ordinances and they go, why did you allow this? That's,
Future neighbors might not be fine with it, or they might then build something that you might not be fine with.
I'm a builder in town, and it sounds like your builder didn't do his homework correctly, didn't do the correct
We're aware of
process,
that.
and now it's coming back to bite the homeowner.
Agreed, and
he
we're
wa- and he
citizens
wa-
of Brandon,
and
we're
I know-
hoping
I
that there
know
would be
that.
some understanding.
Correct. Not your builder, but your contractor.
Did you build this house?
He,
No.
he owned the lot and he
Yeah.
built it under our, I mean, our asks,
They're
right? He
the-
built it for us, understand, like,
they're the
that we
original
were going
owners.
to be purchasing it
Oh.
from him. So he's the,
No.
we weren't,
The
it was under
builder-
his name,
yeah.
so
The
we did not
builder
apply.
was the
The
original
builder
owner?
came in for the variance, is what happened,
Okay.
without their knowledge, because he realized, I'm assuming he messed
To me,
up.
this is a situation of, and we run into this residential, commercial, all kinds of buildings. I'm an architect by trade. When you put a building on a piece of property, you need to think about things like setbacks, green space, working within the zoning ordinances. When I see buildings that are new or relatively new, and without ordinance changes, you know, shame on the designer for not taking these things into consideration. So
just-
it's
we
it's a case of putting too much building on too small of a piece of property.
We wouldn't have spent our $400 or $500 had we not talked to Paul and he gave us some sort of hope that this could possibly happen. And I feel like he probably should have said to us, no, absolutely not. The fact that you want to have a bigger deck is not a hardship. There's no way. It's what a waste of our money and time and your time as well. We talked to him, the contractor talked to him. I don't understand why someone, he didn't say,
Sorry,
we never would do
excuse
that.
me before we continue. If you look at the middle of the page, explain your unnecessary hardship / rights deprived of.
I guess we were lied to, like, we're not all engineers. Our builder told us this is what we could do, and then we couldn't. That's our hardship.
Your builder, the original builder, he came in for an this exact same thing.
Yeah, but it wasn't
When
related to
we
us.
moved in and closed, there wasn't even a deck on the house. We didn't know these things. Like, he kind of went
It
outside.
was
Yeah,
on the house, but it wasn't passed.
Well, it was boards.
I can't comment on what your builder or what anybody tells you, a realtor, a builder, a neighbor, a friend. That has no bearing. They're not an enforcing agency of the ordinances. So. But you have to understand our position without a hardship, our ordinance basically changed to 12-foot setbacks citywide. And people would be flooding in here wanting to build within 12 feet of their property because we
Or
gave it
less.
to this particular property.
Well, could we shorten it up? I mean, there's also, it's a really steep hill going back there. So the whole full lot isn't usable.
Yeah, we can't use up to that fence. Yeah, if we did something smaller.
I'd
is
advise you
there
to
any
do some measuring and see,
compromise?
exactly how big you can be with your deck within the proper setbacks. You might be able to get bigger than you have right now.
We're right on it.
You're right.
So he's
Oh.
saying, could we compromise and have a little bit of room versus as much as what was in that plan?
Well, we still have a motion on the table. Motion is to deny the request. Let's say all in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? I'm sorry.
You do have, and Patrick can explain, you do have the ability to appeal to the city council. It's an appeal option to the city
Can you-
council. that
yeah,
have.
Appeals
Patrick,
do not
could-
cost. Appeal is talked about in 1520-5 of the zoning ordinance. You have 5 working days, so that would be Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It would be the city council. So you just have to let me know in writing by next Thursday. And that writing can be an email, it can be you stop by with a letter, send in a letter, City Hall, just basically saying you're looking to appeal the
Yeah.
denial of the variance.
All right, next agenda item. Let me go back to page 1. Come on. Up. Variance application. We have a couple of, we gotta reconvene planning and, we have to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn the Board of Adjustments.
Bassett, I'll second.
The motion is second to adjourn Board of Adjustment. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Back to planning and zoning. We have a couple of discussion items. Patrick, the first one is a drive-through memo. Can you explain that to
Yep,
us,
so
please?
the best part of planning and zoning, talking through everything.
Yeah.
So, a lot of places have regulations for drive-throughs. We currently do not. We are getting a lot of traffic from, I'm sure everyone's heard, Starbucks is looking, Domino's is looking, Little Caesars is looking, everything you could possibly think of as a drive-through, someone said they're looking. Some things with more traction than others. Do we care to have any minimum stacking space requirements for drive-throughs? I think kind of the industry standard is 3 and most have, but if push came to shove, have that. The city of Sioux Falls has a requirement, and what they do in turn is they offer some kind of reduction to parking space requirements. So that's what they do. It's not something we have to do, but it's an option. Also, we had that talk about strip mall parking spaces, and that's kind of another matter. Sioux Falls kind of gets rid of that whole conversation about what's a food establishment versus what's a retail, and just has, if it's a strip mall or a multi-tenant retail and services place, they have a number that is in the middle of that. So it kind of takes away that conversation if either things are something you'd like to explore.
Have we had any complications with drive-throughs up until this point?
Luckily, no. So, without talking too much about someone's private project, there is potentially a business that is, its business is primarily a drive-through. And, of course, they would look at one of our major thoroughfares. We would not want them to potentially back up into it because their drive-through is unaccommodated and they just, you know, oh, well, once it gets on the street, it's not our problem, kind of thing. So that's what we're trying to avoid. If you wanted to have some kind of, it has to be, the entrance to the drive-through has to be X number of feet from a intersection of X and Y road, or if you'd like to have some kind of standard.
I won't say any names or name the business, but there was a place in Sioux Falls that I know had some major issues with this. Obviously during peak hours, a lot of these are geared towards lunch hour type things, and the stacking area was through the parking lot driving area. So as people were trying to leave, they couldn't back out of their parking spots, and then the stacking eventually got so deep it was out into Minnesota Avenue.
Well, that's,
So it does create some major safety issues, and so I think as indicated in this memo, we may want to consider it. I don't know what the correct number is in that particular instance. One car in front of the ordering, it wasn't necessarily in front of the window, but the cars were stacked up in front of the ordering spot, the kiosk, where you would radio in your order. And it only took about 5 cars and they were out onto Minnesota Avenue. So I don't know what the correct number would be, but it would, in my mind, the stacking, if they have an order kiosk, it should be based on the order kiosk, not on the window. If it's just a window, then it would be based on the window, because that's usually where they're going to get stacked up. Patrick, do you know what Sioux Falls stacking is? Is it 3 vehicles?
I think it's 3. And obviously that works for some things and others, and not others. We'll have to define it more, because I don't know if necessarily, I don't think we would want to apply that to like gas pumps or other things where people stack, so we'd have to define it right. And maybe a bank teller window is a little bit different than a subway window.
I'm trying to think of the ones that are in town now, like Taco John's. That one is right off Split Rock, unless you come and drive around the other. They could have a zipper effect there. If somebody comes in from the south and then somebody comes in from the east. McDonald's, you go around the building, around the back of the building. Scooters, you go around the back of the building. And I know there are others.
So Sioux Falls is 3.
I believe
I
so.
just don't mean, which I want stuff to come, but I don't wanna make a number and then all of a sudden we take out half of the people that wanna come, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
So
Or if,
does, in Sioux Falls, is it 3 to the property line? Is it 3 out of the driving aisle for the regular parking?
I'd have to go back and look at theirs, but this is, whether it's Sioux Falls or somebody else I looked at, the ordinance I looked at was, it was 3 that were 20 feet long from the, so if you had your board, it would be measured from the edge of the board, and it would be 3 spaces that were 20 feet long.
three, yeah.
But they could, was it 3 spaces that could stack without backing into a
I believe so.
property? Or did they allow them to back into their own parking lot access aisle?
I think they had a separate regulation that you could, the end of it couldn't cross where people would walk into the business, so the end of the drive-through. They had ways to stop it from getting into the normal drive lanes.
Well, I
Yeah,
just,
or they come in the driveway and maybe the third car would block the sidewalk, maybe. You don't want that.
Well,
Or
that's
if we
the-
said 3, then would any of the businesses that are already up and running in our town be not
should-
that, would
They
not
would,
in,
they'd be
non-compliant.
non-conforming, like
yeah, I
other
would hate to
things. If
make,
they tried to expand, then
uh,
we'd have to have a conversation.
I
just
know
like
they would,
Chick-fil-A, just for example, in Sioux Falls, they start backing up into their, parking lot pretty quick.
You practically have to start at the mall.
Yeah.
Just to
I'm
get
just
in
for
line.
an example, but that's a very extreme, but
yeah,
I know like Freddy's up here on East 10th, theirs start stacking right away into their parking lot, but the parking's only one way going in, so.
Yeah, it does get to be a problem when people can't leave because the line is there, and then the next guy comes, and then the next
Oh.
guy comes, and that person's
Culver's
sitting there waiting and waiting
on
and
the
waiting.
east side. Cause you come in there and then you turn and go around. Well, if it's too long, that blocks the driveway. People can't get out.
You know, and it applies to other things like, you know, these little coffee shops that sit out
Oh,
in a
yeah,
parking lot.
the cabin ones, yeah.
Yeah, the little
Kiosk ones. Yeah.
movable buildings.
sure.
Yeah. I don't know
Yeah.
if we would even allow that here.
We have had one in the past in the grocery store parking lot. If you'd like, come on up. Yeah, if you'd come up to here and then say your name and address, please.
John Curriasis, 1621 West Riverbend Street, Brandon. It's more an observation. You guys, as a committee, would have to evaluate the blueprint of the building that they're going to put in, including the parking lots and all the space. I don't know about putting an absolute number, but wouldn't it make sense at that point in time to say, okay, let's see how you plan on doing your traffic flow, to make sure that the traffic flow does not interfere with the rest of the environment, whether it's another customer or another vendor in the area or the streets. So I don't know if you could say put an absolute number as much as you can say I can evaluate your traffic flow when you give me the building design, and at that point in time, you either have adequate space or you don't have adequate space for flow through.
Sure, thanks. Would you push the button again so the little light goes off? Thanks. And we do look at site plans. And of course, going case by case is one of our options.
The other option would be to put a number on it, like 3 or 4 or whatever, or by conditional use. So if they come in and maybe their business isn't, you know, a big rush hour where they're gonna have a lot of people stacked up, like over the noon hour or something, maybe it's another type of business, then we could give them a conditional use permit based on their anticipated flow or the layout of their site.
That is how some operated that I looked at. It's, you know, you have your restaurant use, then if a conditional use would be a drive-through. So you'd come in and it would be an individualized determination. Or your method you suggested was kind of a compromise between a permitted use. And if it was above, if you wanted less than a certain number, you could come in and get a reduction. Or so. Plenty of ways to do it.
Do we want to talk about this further or ask Patrick to draft some language for us to look at, or?
I just didn't want to spend a ton of time on it if no one had any
I-
interest in it.
Absolutely.
I think it makes sense from a safety standpoint, especially if we start to see vehicles backing up onto, public right of ways.
And it seems like something that we may continue to see more of, so it's a pertinent issue, I think, so yeah, it'd be good to look at more.
Our society is moving in this direction where people don't wanna get out of their cars anymore
They don't wanna leave their houses.
they can order someone to go get their groceries, they just have to stop and pick them up. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the way things are going.
Refresh my memory, Patrick, with conditional uses, does that stay with the property? Or does that stay with the owner of the property, or both?
If it's a home occupation, it stays with the owner. If it's a normal conditional use, it goes with the property, unless it's discontinued or they don't end up doing
The
it.
business discontinues, or I'm just for an example, it's, I don't know, just a place opens a drive-through, they
Yep.
open for 5 years to close, someone else comes through, but they have a different flow of traffic. Do they get the same condition, or do they have to come in for another, or does it stay, or does it go? That's what I guess I'm asking.
It would stay unless they stop using it. Like, so you had the Threads place on the way out of town, had that drive-through window. It was a party store. It was
Is it, you,
a lot of things
originally it
over
was
the years.
pharmacy.
Yeah, a pharmacy, then a party store, and a clothing store. So that window does exist. If it was a conditional use, they would probably have to come back by now, because that's been vacant for a while. But if it transitioned one to another and they were fine with the number, then it would stay. But it's been essentially discontinued. We don't have that requirement, so they could use it now.
Cause like a Lewis Drug Pharmacy, at the most, you see 2 cars there, at the very most, and that's extremely rare.
That's a quick,
Yeah, that's
that's
a
a
pretty quick turnaround. You're not waiting for somebody to prepare food or,
yeah. On the other hand, maybe a car wash, you wait a little longer in line. You know, or fast food should be a quick turnaround, but not always.
Is there any interest in talking about an offsetting reduction? This kind of stems from the conversation we had about Domino's a while back. If they were primarily just a drive-through, would that earn them offsetting? Should the number work out that way? Or we can just go with the drive-through reg, see how it works, and if that's the way the market goes, then we can talk about it again.
If we had problems in the past, then at least I think we'd have a starting point of, what we need or what might not work, but we haven't. We've been going on a case-by-case basis, and it seems to have worked out so far. I know we're gonna get a lot more businesses in the future, at least, I hope so.
That's the fun of zoning. You write things you hope work, and of course you experience, yields results. So you
Yeah,
amend and
sure.
go with the flow of time.
What do you think? Are we okay the way we are? We wanna talk about it at another meeting when maybe our other member is here? Or what?
I think there's some validity to keeping it active.
Okay. Just wanna bring it up for discussion again at the next meeting?
Whatever you want.
Let's do that. And maybe our other member will be here at that time and may
Please
or may
continue
not
your
have
research, Patrick. Thank
anything
you.
to say. It gives us a chance, it gives us a little while to think about it too.
In the meantime,
Yeah.
maybe look to see what some of the other, local municipalities that have something in place, how they address it.
My guess, based on my last job, is in this area, it's probably just the city of Sioux Falls. We'd probably want to look at Mitchell and Watertown and Aberdeen and yeah, Brookings. But I'm guessing it's maybe Harrisburg at this point. Maybe I don't know if Kevin and T has adopted anything that way or not. But it might just be us. But we'll take a look around.
Okay, thanks. And our other discussion, okay, our other discussion item, dwellings.
Yep. So a while back, we talked about how some of our definitions and where they and how the various districts are written for dwellings don't necessarily line up. What's a twin home versus a townhouse versus apartments? Is it the common aisle and entrance? Is that what makes an apartment? If you have a twin home on a lot where you have one unit on the other one, but it's on the same lot, is that something else? Do we want some flexibility there? I mean, there's a conversation to be had about accessory dwelling units. That seems to be a big trend in Sioux Falls, especially now that apparently the first-time home buyer allotment is close to 400,000 now. I think it's 385. So that's a first-time home buyer house. So houses go up, wages don't necessarily match it. But so what I have in here is just kind of a rough starting point of how to modify some zoning districts. The term dwelling, family is always a complicated thing to define. So this relies more on what is a household, generally a group of people living together, acting as a unit. It tries to get away from a household. Is somebody living with three friends? Is that less of a family if they considered a family than a mom and dad and 2 kids? I don't know. It gets messy when you talk about family and what's a family. So this relies more on household. It's just a group living together. And whether you like that or not, let me know. I mean, we can always play around with that some more. But, dwelling, yeah. So this is just kind of a first attempt at cleaning up some of the districts. Group home in some of the districts is mentioned as both a permitted and a conditional use in some places, and they say different things. So this is our attempt to try to clean it up.
If we are going to do that, then then we might use multi-household instead of multi-family.
Yes, I didn't want to throw too many things into the first draft just because then it's hard to track.
That was one of my first reaction to was we start to complicate things when we start to use 2 different terms, whether it's family or household. Mm-hmm. So I guess I would prefer to keep it consistent of using family or household rather than both. I like the Sioux Falls definitions. They're very short. They're concise. I think they're pretty good. The one comment I have on the proposed definition of dwelling is it starts to try to identify it as a single family or a single household, but dwelling should cover all living applications, whether it's one family household, multiple family households. I think that should be a generic one that defines living versus like group homes and hotels and things where you're more of a short-term stay.
May I ask a question? John Curazis again. Is there because of ignorance, is there a statute in the state that defines how many dissimilar people can live in the same dwelling? Because in some states, it's like 3 or less dissimilar people can live together. Other states, it's 4. Other states define families as, parents and children. And I was just curious if there is a ruling like that, and how does that apply to what you guys are trying to accomplish?
Ours is currently 3 unrelated people. One thing I did notice is it talks about foster children, but it doesn't, our current definition of family doesn't talk about directly related children. It just talks about the adults within the,
Well,
within.
A
within the
here,
group.
any number of people related by blood, marriage, adoption, guardianship, or foster care.
That's the Sioux Falls one.
Well, yeah,
That's the Sioux Falls definition
oh, okay.
of family, not
That's-
ours.
Oh, where's ours?
But ours talks about foster children, but not
Yeah,
blood children. It just talks about three
Yeah.
unrelated people, or three adults not related by marriage or blood.
okay. Option one, let's see, housing notes, option one.
I think what we're trying to avoid is, frat houses and, things like that where you might get 8 college kids, hey, let's all go in and rent a house,
Yeah,
Um, Also, the other thing, I'm kind of skipping around here, is duplex still talks about horizontal adjacencies. There are a lot of, not necessarily in Brandon, but a lot of communities where duplexes are vertical, one on top of the other.
page you want?
So it would be the proposed definition on page 36.
Okay.
Two dwellings joined by a common wall. It could be two dwellings stacked.
Would you have if they were stacked, what would you call the divider instead of a wall? To
I don't think
clarify
we
that.
need to, could just be two dwellings in the same structure, on the same property.
So,
Because the difference between a duplex and a twin home is the twin home, they're each on their own lot.
correct.
So it couldn't be stacked.
A twin
Not a
home you
twin.
could not stack them because they have separate lots, whereas a duplex,
Yeah, you
it's two dwelling units on the same lot. Whether they're adjacent horizontally or whether they're adjacent vertically, they're on the same lot.
Really, you just have to say dwellings joined.
I guess I like the Sioux Falls definitions. I think they're pretty straightforward, pretty easy to understand. The only thing is they don't, maybe incorporate our Brandon's definition of family into it, because it's a little bit different than what Sioux Falls has.
What was that, a year ago or 2 years ago, we had that family discussion? Was that change, did we change it or did we leave it?
I think we left.
Just left it, cause they kinda, yeah.
I think so, because then I think we shifted and talked about group home in a different way to focus more on I don't know if disability would be the right term, but to focus on the particular state of the people, not the people or group of them themselves.
Yeah, I think
It's to match the federal regulation.
that's when we talked about the, like you said, the handicap thing we incorporated them into our definition. Yeah. But I don't think we changed the
I get it's a lot to look over, so I just more wanted to get the conversation started again, just so this is probably an important conversation to have, so. It'll take some time, but hopefully
Okay.
if you have any suggestions on things you wanna have, are there things we don't really care about? Are we trying to define things too narrowly or whatnot, or if there are different types of dwellings you wanna have some places and not others? Do you wanna distinguish between dwellings by what they're used, what makes them? Some have special regulations for shipping container homes. Do we care to get that far in the weeds? Accessory dwellings are big now in Sioux Falls just because houses are so expensive. But I don't know if that's something people here would necessarily want, but it's a conversation to have.
So we'll be talking about this again.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. So that brings us to the end of our agenda. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'd bring so moved.
Shoneman second.
A motion and a second to adjourn. All in favor say aye. I also say aye. And all opposed? Motion carries. We are adjourned. It is 7:32 PM Central Daylight Time.